Mearman, and I'm joined by Juliane Scheffel, who's going to do most of the talking actually about what we did with the new students in autumn 2020, which obviously was a very special time and a unique time for inducting new students. So next slide, Juliane, if you can. So just for some context, in 2019, I was working on a research and transformation project exploring links between induction, exit and retention across the whole university. And some key principles that emerged from that work were that welcome induction are ongoing processes designed to foster a sense of belonging and community. Social networks are incredibly important. Advice from peers is really valued, but relationships with key academic staff are crucial. And the induction needs to recognise that students don't have the headspace for lots of information, much of which can come later. And we saw that it was vital to understand this student's emotional journey as they enter university, which can differ greatly depending on the specific student. Halfway through this fellowship project, our work then became central to the university's response to COVID, helping to establish some principles for that and also an evidential base on which to build the new resource. So if the next slide, the university built something called Getting Started at Leeds, which is a Blackboard-based wrapper, mainly for existing resources, sharing practice across the university and curated so as to guide students through at their own pace when they wanted to. So it provided students with the basic information, but also ways into other resources for deeper exploration. So this work was designed to take the burden off schools and faculties so that they could focus on building community and establishing that sense of belonging. So as part of the process of this, Julian and I met to discuss all of the above, all of these principles, and really focused on those underlying principles of welcome and induction. And that hopefully helped underpin what she did with the economics students. So I'll hand over to her now.
Thank you, Andrew. So what you see on the right-hand side here is essentially a screenshot of this resource that we used. And then what we did is we populated it. So each program was allocated a specific space to populate it really with information about themselves. And what we tried to do is we wanted to keep it really personal. So we had a lot of messages from different people that are important, as Andrew mentioned, crucial people, for example, the head of school. We also had welcome messages from student societies or from module leaders really to introduce the modules. But really crucially were, as we mentioned before, these personal tutors, or call them academic advisors really. So these messages were really a minute long and introduced themselves really shortly to who they are and gave a little bit of a personal touch. And then one thing that we didn't really do so well in previous years was because we have really big programs, is to allow students a space to ask questions. So what we did this year is we had this Padlet where students during that induction week were able at any point in time to ask us any questions about anything that was going on, but also to read really anonymously, this is important, but also to read really messages from others beforehand so they could potentially see already some questions to their questions they may have had here. So that is something that we definitely need to keep, because often it was really difficult for students to know who to contact if they had questions. Now, we were really clear about the structure of the induction week. So for us, it was really important to allocate each day and have a really specific purpose for each of the sessions. So the first sessions that we had was really a welcome to the division. So it was introducing us, introducing the university, but also allowing the students to meet each other. I'm going to come to that later as to how we did that, but this was really a nice and really nice introduction really to that day. And then on Tuesday, we left it free purposefully because we wanted students to organize themselves, get settled in, and so on. On Wednesday, the session that we had was a session where the academic advisors or personal tutors started to really meet with their students. So that was important because in previous years, we had personal tutors allocated to their students only by week 2 or so, and that was often a little late. And we thought that this year it was really important to meet the personal tutor early on, so to be really that academic anchor, so to say, to ask any questions to. And it was also important during that meeting that the personal tutor was joined by a second year student who was able to give some more advice as to from their perspective about what best to do at university, about their own experience and so on. And then on a Thursday, we organized a social event, our first social event, something that we do regularly every second week in relationship with the Economic Society. We call it Lunch with the Economists. And that session was, the purpose of that session was really to introduce them to research. So the main topic of that session was what can we learn, or what is economics taking in from 2020? So how does it impact different areas of economics? And that was very, very well attended. So we invited all students from all years to that event and introduced them to research a little bit, and had very lively discussions. And then the Friday session was really the wrap-up session, where we talked about preparing them for the weeks to come, how to deal with this online world, and so on. Important, Andrew mentioned before that we really tried to integrate these resources from university into the session here. But we didn't just do that in a static way. We really wanted it to be practical. So in this case, for example, what we did is each of these sessions here was held on a different platform, so that students already in that first week were introduced to these different platforms, so to Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and so on, something that they will see in their teaching anyways. Now, community building was really, really, really crucial, and we thought really hard about what we could do. So in previous years, what we did is we had a campus tour that was really important. So it was a campus challenge, essentially, where students were able to form the first friendships, and we're also able to talk to older students. And it was really hard for us to replicate that because we couldn't be on campus. So what we tried to do is on Monday, we essentially started out by putting students into breakout rooms. We talked about that yesterday in one of the sessions, used it as a warm-up really to the session. But then importantly, we thought, and this was coming out of one of the discussions I had with Andrew, we needed to give students a challenge, something, a task to do in order for them to really work with each other in this online world. So what we did is we gave them a task to produce either a video or a poster on this interesting topic, right? So on the topic, and how is economics impacted by working from home, or how are people impacted by that? So what we did is we allocated also a brief to that, or we had a brief accompanying that essentially pointed students to important resources that university provided them with. So for example, resources from the library about how to do a poster presentation, or the resources that Andrew mentioned before, how to collaborate on different platforms, etc. So that was really our sneaky way to not give them a campus tour, but rather a tour of resources, and induct them in this way to the things that are really, really important for the semesters to come. One thing that was also an added bonus is that students in the main economic module that was coming in the first semester was assessed by a group essay. So this exercise really helped them to work together and collaborate, and was really, really important. Students then had to send us their posters or videos by Thursday. We only received posters, 45 of them, and remember, these groups were between 3 to 6 students big. So we were really, really happy with what we received. And then on the Friday session, we then awarded the best prizes to students. And it was really nice to see how students were happy when they got the prize, or when they were not so happy when they didn't receive it. But that really helped with community building quite a bit. Just to show you the final poster, one of the winning posters here, we thought it was perfect. It was amazing because it essentially looked at how working from home impacted different groups in society by wrapping it around this really nice topic of a family. Yeah, Andrew, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Juliane. So, I mean, very, very briefly, and obviously we're very happy to take more questions. Some key lessons that we learned from this. I mean, we were trying quite hard to align the central activity with the local activity, and therefore it was key that Juliane understood the overarching philosophy and the objectives of induction that were established centrally. And it was also really important to share some good practice across the university on the specifics of online induction in particular. So in that sense, conversations between the two of us became really, really important to the design of this process, which may seem obvious, but it's something that can get lost, that this sort of relationship building is really important. However, as it turned out, because of the time pressure, information about the details of that institution came a bit late. And so the ability to embed them into our practice and to our planning was a bit more limited than we would have liked. So in the coming year, we're trying to get ahead of the game and really understand what's in that institutional resource much earlier than we did this year, or that Juliane did this year, or indeed I did, to be honest. Having said that, online welcome induction was by no means bad. In fact, it worked really well and better in some cases. And so much of the approach that we took is going to be used again. So there'll be, as I say, a revamped institutional resource that all students can use and that we can sort of use as a platform. Plus the use of the local videos by our colleagues to introduce themselves and just say something about their module. The earlier peer mentoring and those early peer relationships, we realise, again, it may seem obvious, but we realise how important these are. So we try and do that. And also meeting personal tutors right from the go is incredibly important. And it proved very important last year because obviously students felt much less anchored than they otherwise would do. But we think that looking to the future, it's just as important to keep these things. So many of these features that we hadn't really done before, but were sort of forced into doing so by the pandemic situation, are going to be retained, and we think helped improve the experience for our students as much as they could have been at this time.